Are you awake? I'm just wondering, because a lot of you out there are asleep. You say you're woke. You're asleep. Completely unself-aware of what you do and what you say, and the hypocrisy and the... you guys are walking oxymorons, most of you on the left, and I'm calling you out today. It's time to wake up. For those of you who still have half a brain, it's time to wake up. With all this impeachment nonsense going on right now, I thought I'd make some comments with regard to that, and some people who are speaking about it out there today, calling some of them out as well. One of the reasons for this video is prompted somewhat by the appearance of professors and scholars like Jonathan Turley and Alan Dershowitz, who are all over. Dershowitz is all over the news these days. He's written a book, another book about impeaching Trump and his own problems he's had. And he is a prime example, Professor Alan Dershowitz, of what I call a walking oxymoron. Now, Alan Dershowitz is historically been consistent. I'll give him that. And he claims his consistency. He parades it everywhere. But he's been consistently a conflicted human being, as far as I'm concerned. With all due respect, the man is a constitutional scholar. I doubt there's anyone in America who knows as much or knows more than he does when it comes to the Constitution. And he upholds it bravely, loudly, proudly. We need more of that. Kudos. He is a pro-Israel dude. I give him kudos for that. He has stood steadfastly in the wake of much criticism about that, mostly from the left, by the way, and stood his ground. So again, kudos. Overall, he's a good dude, honest dude, whatever. This is not a personal attack per se. It's just that he represents a group of people in the United States that are so unself-aware that it's mind-boggling. I want to give you an example of what I'm saying. He has of late been defending Donald Trump, not because he ever voted for him. The man's never voted for a Republican in his life, I'm sure. He is a historical Democrat, voting for Clinton, against Bush, voting for Obama, against Trump, and going all the way back to God knows when he started voting, in the 50s or whatnot. But again, consistent. But his defending of Donald Trump is not because he is suddenly becoming a right-winger. God, no, he's not. It couldn't be further from the truth. The reason is because he's attempting or trying to prove that he is consistent with regard to how he thinks impeachment should or should not go forward. And he cites his consistency by claiming that he was just as consistent about not wanting Bill Clinton impeached 20 years ago as he is today. And that is correct. Again, he is consistent. He did not want Clinton impeached 20 years ago, and he claims it's for the same reasons. And again, he is consistent. He did think that Bill Clinton should have been impeached because he didn't feel that the charges against him rose to the level of an impeachable offense. And neither does he believe that Trump's so-called offenses rise to the level of an impeachable offense. And that's where he's fine and dandy, except for one problem. It's not his inconsistency. It's that he is so unself-aware of his bias that he doesn't understand that he is doing exactly what all Democrats do, and that is equivocate. If Democrats can't equivocate, they can't exist, apparently. Now, what is he equivocating? He's equivocating Clinton and Trump, at least as regards to impeachment. Obviously, in no other way is he equivocating them, because otherwise he'd have either voted both for or both against him at the voting booth. No, he's equivocating that the charges against Clinton were as specious as the charges against Trump. And that is where he is wrong. Dead freaking wrong. Now, as a constitutional scholar and a guy who seems to know what an impeachable offense is, when it comes to his own fellow Democrats, it's like his mind goes into vapor lock. I'm calling you out, Dershowitz, because if you don't see this, then, you have this tendency to say, at least recently, that any Democrat, any so-called scholar, constitutional scholar, who is any Democrat too, is abusing their power going after Trump today, is not an academic and doesn't know what they're talking about. Well, I got news, Dersh, Prof, Allen. You don't know what you're talking about either when you say that Bill Clinton, his offenses did not rise to an impeachable offense. You are not just wrong, you are dead effing wrong. There is no comparison between the two, and your attempts to conflate the two and make them similar is nothing short of malpractice. Calling you out. Trump is being accused of stuff that was made up and disproven. Disproven before it even went to these committees trying to decide whether they're going to impeach him or not. Disproven by multiple ways in multiple times, and they kept having to change what they were going to charge him with, from meddling with Russia or trying to have Russia interfere with our elections, to obstruction of justice, to now the bribery thing, and that they keep moving the goalposts like Democrats always do, changing the rules in the middle of the game. Even Dershowitz is admitting this, that the Democrats are doing this. He's saying they're doing this, and it's wrong. He's saying this is abuse of power if they go through with this. This is what's amazing. It's like, wake up, Dersh. And he knows that Trump's guilty of nothing. Maybe a little bit of bad judgment here and there, but nothing that would rise to a high crime misdemeanor. Now, what is a high crime misdemeanor? First of all, you have to define our terms. What does the Constitution actually say? The Constitution actually says that a president of the United States, for instance, this also applies to people in government, judges, but impeachment, have to be found guilty, or not guilty, because this is not the trial, this is not the Senate trial, but have to have been charged with 4 specific things that rise to that level: treason, bribery, high crimes, and other misdemeanors. But here's where the liberals love to play with context and take words out of context and play around with modernity in order to get around the intent of the Constitution. They think of misdemeanors today. They're trying to convince people that the word misdemeanors means what it means today, like a jaywalking or a parking ticket. That's not what it means. Misdemeanor comes from the English parliamentary meaning, which is basically the equivalent of a high crime. And it is something that was deleterious to the safety or the running of a government or a country or its citizens or something to that effect. It has an older meaning, and that was the meaning used 240 years ago, or 230 or whatever it was, when the Constitution was ratified in 1789. That was the meaning they meant, not little, jaywalking tickets. So all of those things were the worst offenses a president, for instance, could be charged with. And Clinton was charged with 11. That's right, folks. 11. Trump's being charged with ones that are being made up and changed on a regular basis because they are trying to perform an impeachment in search of a crime. Clinton's impeachment was a crime which led to an impeachment. Not just a crime, multiple crimes that led to an impeachment. Completely different thing, and shame on Alan Dershowitz for trying to make them seem the same. Shame on him. The only reason he didn't want Clinton impeached because he voted for him and he liked him, or at least he was friends with him, or he was, on his bandwagon, whatever. I don't know what relationship they may or may not have had, don't care. But he defended him most vociferously 20 years ago, 19 years ago, and I guess it was 21 years ago, and he was over the top in his defense of him. He ignored 11 separate charges. While Trump, there's not one charge that any witness can say he was guilty of when asked, and all the Democrats can do is keep repeating them as if they're the truth, but can't back them up. And when pressed and when asked, they have nothing. To prove my point, I'm going to rattle off the charges against Bill Clinton that Ken Starr's investigations brought forth to the Congress and the Justice Committee, the committee that then eventually impeached Bill Clinton. Article 1 charged that Clinton lied to the grand jury concerning 4 different things: the nature and details of his relationship with Monica Lewinsky, concerning prior false statements he made in the Paula Jones deposition. He lied to the grand jury concerning prior false statements he allowed his lawyer to make, characterizing Lewinsky's affidavit, and his attempts to tamper with witnesses. And that was 4. Article 2 charged Clinton with attempting to obstruct justice in the Jones case by encouraging Lewinsky to file that false affidavit, encouraging Monica Lewinsky to give false testimony if and when she was called to testify, concealing gifts he had given to Lewinsky that had been subpoenaed, attempting to secure a job for Lewinsky to influence her testimony, permitting his lawyer to make false statements characterizing Lewinsky's affidavit, attempting to tamper with the possible testimony of his secretary, Betty Curry, and making false and misleading statements to a potential grand jury witnesses. 11 different counts, all considered high crimes or misdemeanors. And he was impeached. Does it say sex in there anyway, by the way, you dumbass liberals? No. He was not impeached because of sex. He was impeached because he lied multiple times and obstructed justice multiple times. And what makes that even more egregious? Well, if you go back in some of my videos, you'll note, especially the one where I talked about the Clinton crime family, what makes this lying and this obstruction even more egregious is that we're not talking about your garden variety criminal here. We're talking about the President of the United States, who is, as such, the guy in charge of the entire executive branch. And if you are the guy at the head of the executive branch, you are by nature, by being elected as such, the highest serving officer in the executive branch that is in charge of enforcing the law. You are the highest official, a law enforcement official in the country. Of all the people who should be not obstructing justice and lying under oath, of all the people who should know better, is the guy at the top of the pyramid, the guy in charge of enforcing the laws in the country. And to make it even worse than that, Clinton did all this against a civilian in a civil trial. He tried to screw Paula Jones the first time, and when she took him to trial in his attempt, he tried to screw her again, legally, by not allowing her to have the truth told and having a fair trial when she tried to sue him. In the end of the day, he ended up settling for $800,000, which basically, in my book, proves he was guilty because he knew this was going very badly. And he was also impeached and disbarred. Why would the American Bar Association disbar him for sex? They wouldn't, because it wasn't about sex. It was about doing all this stuff that he should have known better. He had no shame, and we all knew it. And Dershowitz backed him the entire way, before, during, and after, and ever since. There is no comparison to Trump. None. Zero. Nada. So I'm calling you out, Dersh. He is emblematic of a guy who just can't see the forest for the trees. An admitted Democrat. And that's all he does. Must vote Democrat. Hey, but, Bill Clinton, he did all this stuff that wasn't so... Must vote Democrat. And we'll get into this a little bit more on the next part here, when I'm going to discuss just how hypocritical and blind and how tone deaf Dershowitz and a lot of people in this country are in more detail. See you on the next one.